The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the producers and the individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the staff of the Sun Prairie Media Center, its members or underwriters, the board members of the Media Center Commission, Charter Communications, TDS Telecom, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and the man seated next to me has done some tasteful nudes for the latest Good Housekeeping centerfold. His name is Mike Roth.
And some untasteful ones.
Ooh, yowza.
Yeah. Well, you know, they found me.
Yeah.
I do free model work.
Yeah.
Usually I ask for dinner, but it was Good Housekeeping, so I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it for free. It's a good cause.
It
Good
is.
housekeeping.
Gonna get spotted on the street now. If not for this, definitely for that. So this week we have a few movies to discuss, and I'm going to start us off, sir, with a streaming spotlight for a Netflix film called Love, Death, and Robots. Now this is more of a little series than a film.
Uh-huh.
But what it is it is an animated anthology series produced by David Fincher and Tim Miller. You know Tim Miller, he directed Deadpool.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is 18 short episodes. Each episode is between about 6 to 16 minutes long.
Okay.
And they have 18 different directors.
Okay.
They're all dealing with themes of love, death, and robots. That's the title. It features all styles of animation, though, the whole gamut of different animation, and feels very much like a spiritual cousin to heavy metal.
Oh, okay.
In fact, as I was doing a little more research, it started off as they wanted to do another heavy metal, and decided to do this instead.
Well, heavy metal is notoriously bad.
Well, this is not.
Oh, cool.
But what it is very R-rated.
Okay.
There is some extreme violence and some very graphic sexual situations in this that kind of shock you.
Okay.
And it's interesting because of the different styles of animation. Some of them feel like cutscenes out of a video game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's some that, and then there's some that are like Spider-Verse style animations. There's some of them that I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And they're all sci-fi related, and mostly within the sci-fi, there's a lot of sci-fi horror.
Okay.
A lot of robots in space, things happening to people, things like that. Some of them are completely outlandish. I mean, there's one of these that's like a 6-minute short in which it stars a bowl of yogurt, which is our new overlord. And we all bow down to this bowl of yogurt who has come into power. It's nothing that I've ever thought about before. That's never crossed my mind. And due to their short nature, I mean, there's 18 of them. They're not all gold.
Yeah.
Some of them are really great. And some of them are less so, but they go by maybe 15 minutes and they go right by. It's kind of interesting. You know, some of them are pretty spectacular, though. I'd kind of like to see more installments of this.
Were they mostly violent? Because I did see this and I
Yeah.
wanted to start watching them, but I was with someone that wouldn't be doing well
They're
with
mostly
violence.
violent.
Okay.
Almost all of them. I would say out of the 18, 14 of them.
To me, it kind of reminded me of when Matrix came
Mm-hmm.
out with their sequel. They
Yeah.
did that. We have something in every media, and they had short animatrix-like films,
Yeah.
but every single one was kind of a different style
Mm-hmm.
of storytelling and artwork, which I really thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, in this one, there were some really cool ideas. There were some that I would like to see expanded upon. Like, well, I would watch more of this. You know,
Okay.
8 minutes is not enough. The cool thing about this, I mean, David Fincher is a big time filmmaker, and to put his name on this and he's producing this is pretty interesting because it gets people to check it out that wouldn't normally just check out a series of short animated films. And it's cool because it gives different filmmakers really a spotlight.
Yeah.
That are using different styles of animation and telling stories. Like I said, telling a story about a yogurt who's our leader. I mean, different ideas are getting out there, and so I would love to see more of this because it showcases people who have new insights.
Well, these short storytelling is starting to get back into style again.
Yeah.
We're going to have Twilight Zone coming out soon.
Yeah.
There's a huge popularity with Black Mirror. I think when you have something like this, it showcases these writers and directors. We're going to see more of this, and we might see more of all these individual people really soon, just because it is becoming a style again, which is one of my favorite styles. It really is.
The other interesting thing about this, because it's on Netflix, is it is the first one in this experiment that Netflix is using. This was the first series they've done it on, of having random order of shows. Okay. And so they have 4 different random orders of how they're presenting these shows. So you may get them in a different order than I will, which is going to make it frustrating when you're like, oh man, you know, in episode 4 when this happened, and you're like, wait a minute. Episode 4, that did not happen.
Yeah, you got to remember
it's
titles.
It's going to be and that makes it tough because I don't. Okay. Especially when you're streaming through. I don't remember the titles to all these.
Yeah.
It's the one where the dude turned into this, you know, and the one where he got stranded in space. So it's interesting, but apparently Netflix is going to start pushing this thing now where they randomize the order of shows.
Yeah, that makes...
I don't know.
It
feels like a gimmick to me.
Yeah. I was going to say I could see a point, but I really don't.
I don't, but it's interesting. And Love, Death, and Robots, I give it, I mean, if I have to give it a score on the series, I give it 4 stars.
Excellent.
It's worth checking out. And like I say, they kind of just clip by real quick.
I'll be picking it up this week.
Yeah, there you go.
Definitely. You talked me into it.
Good. That's the whole point of this. Another thing that I might talk you into is our first movie on the marquee. Real quickly, I saw a documentary this week in theaters from director Todd Douglas Miller called Apollo 11. Apollo 11, they have taken unseen footage and unheard recordings of the Apollo 11 moon landing mission. And this footage that hasn't been used before really puts you in the moment of this time. The reason they have all this footage is there was a documentary that was being shot that ended up failing partway through. They folded up shop on it, but they had access to everybody involved in the Apollo 11 mission, and they shot it in 65 millimeter film, which is not a type of film that is used very often. So it adds this scope and scale that is rarely seen in movies, and it has incredibly crisp images because of that. The film is all about the moon mission, and no cutaways, no talking heads, no news things, no thought. It's just the footage that's presented, and they cleaned up all this audio. They spent years cleaning up this audio. So you're listening to this. You're kind of immersed in the enormity of this event of us landing on the moon for the first time. What was really interesting is they show crowd shots of people like waiting to watch the rocket launch, and you see these crowds of people in a parking lot, and there's Johnny Carson in the crowd. Like, first time I'm like, is that Johnny Carson? Kind of looks like Johnny Carson. And they show later, like, pan across the crowd. And it's just, they don't stop and, like, there's Johnny Carson panning across. Like, that's definitely Johnny Carson standing in the crowd. So weird. But you listen to audio conversations between the crew and the guys here on Earth. You watch things like, you just get to watch the launch pad roll into place on tracks. It's things that you don't normally see. And the footage of the moon landing kind of split screen with the mission control. It's great. And there's no narrator, there's no nothing. What they do have is this great score featuring music and instruments that were only around at this time, at this moment. It's pretty interesting. It really makes you feel like you're there, because kind of like First Man, you only get to see what the astronauts see because the camera's in the capsule.
I'm surprised this hasn't been really seen before. Those images looked awesome.
They really are. And like I said, it was this filmmaking crew, this documentary crew that just kind of bailed partway through the project, and all this footage was set. The other thing I really like is because everyone knows Neil Armstrong, everyone knows Buzz Aldrin. Those are the 2 guys landed on the moon. Michael Collins gets kind of left behind a lot. A lot of people don't even know his name because he was circling around the moon. He was the getaway driver. And he's featured in this really nicely. You're like, oh yeah, there were 3 guys. You know? But,
very cool.
It's great, and and it shows. It really features the heroes. Not just the 3 guys that were up there, but the heroes down on Earth that were making it happen, you know? So it was pretty interesting, pretty cool stuff. Apollo 11, I recommend it, documentary film. Check it out. I think I may even give it a score. Did I give it a score? Man in the Booth? I gave it 4 stars. How about that?
You really like this movie.
I enjoyed that movie quite a bit. Speaking of enjoyable movies, sir, what do you have for us?
Oh, wow, you got me on that one.
Uh-oh.
5 Feet Apart. We've seen the trailers over and over again.
Yeah,
it's a new romantic, I I guess, romantic comedy, but it's a teen film.
Uh-huh.
You have two people that
Do you think it's like comedy?
kind of, they did some funny things in here.
Okay.
Okay, I'll get into that a little bit later. So we have cystic fibrosis. If you're not familiar with it, it's a genetic lung disease where you collect a lot of mucus, and you don't see many old people that have this because you die.
Yeah,
A
short
lot of times
lifespan.
it's very short lifespan. Your only hope is to get lungs. Lungs only last maybe 5 years before your body starts rejecting it, and then you have to get new lungs, which they're not easy to come by. But either way, so what sounds like it's going to be a very sad story. Everybody could kind of predict how this is kind of going with children who are dying. The movie revolves around 3 kids who are in stasis of having this
Isolation.
disease. Yeah, isolation. Because of the nature of their lungs, they'll have certain bacteria that can't cross over. The rule is everybody needs to stay 6 feet apart at all times so that they don't cross-contaminate. But love gets in the way, especially with love teenagers. Therefore, there is a huge scene where our female lead, played by Haley Lou Richardson, she plays Stella. She has a video blog where she's like, I am stealing a foot, and it's going to be 5 feet apart because this is life, and blah, blah, blah. And her cliche friend goes, whoa! And that is where I'm going to pick up why I think this is kind of a rom-com, because we just had a movie talking about all the cliches of rom-coms, and this one hits a lot of them.
Okay.
We had the sassy nurse who really couldn't do her job very well. She loses these children quite frequently.
She does.
That is not good. That is not good for the hospital. They are minors still. We have the gay best friend that acts a certain stereotype. We don't really get to know his story very well.
He likes to cook.
He likes to cook.
I know that about him.
There's a lot of things in this movie that happens with romantic comedies. It's not very much of a comedy. It's more of a teen drama. But at the same time, we see all the cliches.
But we've seen this too with Everything, Everything, and there was another one last year about basically teens who have to be separated, and the one where Midnight Sun, where she couldn't go outside during the day, the sunlight would kill her. Very similar things of where a disease is, you have to be apart, but I don't care. Yeah. My heart says differently. And this is a formula that we've seen.
And I get it. And they did something slightly different with this formula, with bringing the CF to light. But otherwise, this was a movie I've seen many times before. It hit a lot of cliches. It hit a lot of things that could not absolutely happen without people keeping their jobs. There's a scene where there's a character who dies in this. I'm not going to say who. And all the nurses were crying. And the first thought I had was someone got fired for letting these children keep leaving the hospital.
Yeah, that's the thing. No one's around.
And then my date's like, oh, wait a minute. No, she's crying because someone died earlier. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah, this movie, I mean, Haley Lou Richardson, I really like her as an actress who plays Stella. I've enjoyed her in basically everything that she's done in the last couple of years. And Cole Sprouse, I mean, this kid's got himself a real career. The Sprouse twins, but my wife's been watching Riverdale lately. He plays Jughead on Riverdale.
Oh, yes, he does. Yep, that's a great show.
Yeah, and he kind of plays the bad boy in both of those things. And I didn't 100% buy him as the bad boy with CF in this movie, but I enjoyed their dynamic together. And this movie is incredibly formulaic, but it doesn't lack emotion though. I don't think that it lacks the emotion, even though you know what's going to go on. I could have called out the beats in this movie from the beginning. I knew who was going to die at the end of this movie right away, but it doesn't mean that it lacked. I think that both actors, Cole Sprouse and Haley Richardson, were good. I think they were just given really not a whole lot to do that was groundbreaking or new. It felt like, yeah, I've seen this. I thought the first half of the movie was good. I liked the first half of the movie as you're kind of explaining the CF and different things. That third act was really bad. It completely unraveled in that third act, where I was
You could predict every beat.
I was really frustrated with because they did. They just went right down a path. They're like they couldn't help but I'm like, no, this is where this movie has to go. This is where all these movies have to go. So this one has to as well.
And the person I brought was a nurse, so she was able to point out all the things that could not have possibly happened, which I thought was great. I thought it made it more interesting.
But it couldn't help steer out of being a Lifetime movie at the end.
True.
And that's what it ended up feeling like.
I did like the soundtrack. And the movie, because of the cliches and some of the things that I had problems with, didn't bring out the emotions, but the songs in the track were beautiful. A lot of the artists I know, and I could listen to their songs and actually cry in my car just because they're so sad and they bring out so much emotion. But the movie itself did not do that for me.
I thought Haley Lou Richardson did her best to try and bring this movie out of the formulaic dreck.
Yeah.
Because I really thought she was good in this.
She was good. I give her that.
But yeah, it didn't do anything that different than any of these other movies that we've seen or talked about in the past.
And sometimes when a movie is formulaic, I could still point at it and go, you know what? This was predictable, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. But there's just too many little pitfalls where I was like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's a cliche. And that kind of ruined it for me.
Sure.
I went on a Tuesday, which was a packed house. There was a lot of people just bawling, just crying. So, I mean, if you can cry, go ahead and go to this.
When I went and saw it, our girl Katrina at the Palace, shout out Katrina, she's like, are you going to need to bring tissues in with you? I was like, why? She's like, I've just heard things. I don't know.
I already I saw one of the cashiers, her favorite movie is this movie. So I feel a little bad about...
Sorry about that. Yeah. You're about to get hurt. Mike, what did you give 5 Feet Apart?
I gave it 2 stars. I think it's below par. I like the soundtrack. I like the acting. But the story is just so formulaic and so cliche, it just bugged me.
Yeah, I give it 2.5 stars. I put it right down the middle. I think without Cole Sprouse and Haley Lou Richardson, this movie is a Lifetime movie starring Tori Spelling or somebody, and I don't care. They're the only things that made this movie mediocre to me, was their acting performances. You don't need this.
All right.
That's
all
basically
right. And hopefully,
hopefully
the cashier that loves this movie misses this show.
Yeah, otherwise you're going to...
Picks them all up.
I wouldn't say they do anything to your food, but... moving on, the last movie we have on the marquee this week is a film that spent 2 years on my most anticipated list.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to this since a year and a half ago. Boy, waiting for this movie to come out. Captive State from filmmaker Rupert Wyatt, starring John Goodman as a man named William Mulligan. This is a film that is set in Chicago 10 years after an alien occupation. Humans are either working with the aliens or forming a resistance, trying to get inside the walled-off closed zone that the aliens live in, trying to take them down. And we have Ashton Sanders as a kid named Gabriel. His brother is like the face of the resistance, and he's out there on the streets also trying to work with the resistance. The movie builds this slow intensity and features very little of what you'd expect in an alien occupation film. It was kind of a little more District 9 or Attack the Block than like a Cowboys and Aliens type movie.
Yeah.
You don't see the aliens very much in this movie. There's not a lot of like shoot 'em up scenes with the aliens or anything like that. There's a lot of exposition to open the film. A lot of stuff is just thrown at you in the first few minutes about this. And I had a hard time keeping things straight through this movie. I felt like I wasn't giving any motivations to any of the characters. I was having a hard time understanding why people were doing what they were doing, who was doing what. You show Gabriel's older brother, who is the head of this resistance, but you don't see him do much. You just see his face plastered everywhere. There's so many things going on in this, and it reared its ugly head near the end where I was really left confused about why things were happening in the final act.
In the final act, that was the only time where I was like, you were trying to redeem yourself, because most of the movie wasn't any story. Everybody had the same emotion. It was just, we need to go to this place, to this place, to this place, and everybody had anxiety, and people were rushed, and people were trying to be secretive. But that was it. That was all this movie until the very end.
You don't understand why. Like there's gray areas, but it's all gray area. It felt like
Yeah.
I don't know who's doing what or why. What do they care? The government is like working with the aliens to kind of root out the resistance.
Yeah.
To help out our new overlords.
I felt like I got what was going on for the most part. I just didn't like what I was seeing. At the last 5 minutes, it kind of wrapped it up a little bit in a way where I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I wish they did more with this earlier in the film than at the very end, because I felt like all I did was watch people be anxious for, an hour and a half.
Yeah. I think that there was just so much basic character info that was left out. They introduce a lot of characters, but I learned very little about most of those characters.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. I mean, we've had this issue in other films where I have a hard time caring about characters if I don't get to know them.
Yeah.
If they're just kind of nameless, faceless people who I'm like, oh, and then that guy, what is he again? What does he do? Oh, no, he might die.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well.
But would you really care?
Yeah, I mean, people are given very little to do with it within this movie, other than like Gabriel and John Goodman. Vera Farmiga's in this movie, very underused.
Yeah.
I would love to see her used a little more in this movie, but I don't know. I want to know more about the characters, and they had plenty of time to tell me about them.
Yeah.
They could have really introduced some things.
They took a voyeuristic point of view. Instead of giving us story, they gave us what they were trying to do, I guess, Black Hawk Down in a way. Just having characters in a bad spot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't really compare it to Black Hawk Down, but
That's got a lot of
I just
action.
did.
It's
It
got
does have a lot of action. This one did not have a lot of
action. That builds a lot of tension.
It was a lot of just people being really serious and worried.
So I like the ideas, some of the ideas that were presented in this movie. As an alien occupation movie, I like that genre, and I like some of the things that were given to me, and some of the tension that was built in this movie. There were moments where I was like, oh man, this is what I'm looking for. But I just wanted to care more about what was going on than I did, and it was frustrating. Now John Goodman, great as always. I love him.
And to give them credit, the last 5 minutes they did try to get you to care. It was way too late. Way too late.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, it did lead to a discussion. I saw this movie with a friend of mine, and afterwards we're trying to hash it out, and he had a different confusion than I did. So between the two of us, we were kind of trying to piece it together. So it led to an interesting discussion.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the discussion was, did you fully understand what this guy was, what the point of this was? No. Well, I kind of understand this part of it, and I don't know. It felt like something was lost along the way between this whole story.
I felt like I got it. I just didn't really like it that much.
Yeah, it's hard to connect.
It was okay.
Right.
And
that's
foreshadowing my score.
Unfortunately, I mean, and I went in with, I try and guard my expectations, but this thing I've been talking about it since the beginning of last year.
We were even excited to see possibly one of our friends in there, and his part got cut, and that has nothing to do with my score.
No, but that was also part of it as I'm watching it, like, he got cut.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to care more about these characters. Unfortunately, I did not. But Captive State, what did you end up giving this?
I gave it a 2.5. I thought it was okay. There's some good ideas. It just wasn't really a good movie.
Yeah, I ended up giving it 3 stars, mostly off of some of the premise that I did enjoy, John Goodman's performance. But yeah, it left a lot lacking for what I was expecting.
Yeah. Kind of remind me of like another movie.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Like what other movie are you talking about, Michael?
Well, there is a movie called Alien Nation. Came out in 1988. This was a huge film at the time. It kind of explores racism a little bit. And it stars James Caan. He plays Matthew Sykes. He is a detective, a cop. His partner dies from one of these aliens that now have to habitat Earth because, they need a place to live too, and he gets a new partner, Sam Frisco, played by
Sam
Mandy.
Francisco.
San Francisco, and they have to work on a case together. They explore a lot of little things about racism and society and stuff like that, and it was received so well that next year there was a television series that I remember watching.
Yeah.
There is very few things I remember about watching intently. This is something I remember I was home when it played.
Yep. Me too. Interestingly, it's set in 1991, so it was made in '88. They say 3 years from now. The aliens have been here for 3 years, and now they're being integrated into society. There's a backlash. The newcomers, they call them, a bunch of newcomers, and they're being integrated in. Sam Francisco, were awful, is the first newcomer cop. He's a detective, So then you get the hard-scrabbled James Caan as the detective. He doesn't want this new partner, not much less one of those guys, one of these newcomers. And you have this, he's not so vaguely racist towards these people. Yeah. And you have all the discrimination against these people as refugees. So, you have this refugee thing. And I think the strength of it is that you have James Caan, you have Mandy Patinkin, a great actor in here, as the two leads, even though, Mandy Patinkin's under a big rubber head the entire time. And your villain, Terrence Stamp, playing this guy Harcourt, who's like the big criminal underlord boss of the newcomers. I thought he was kind of fun. He's a slimy villain. The thing with this movie is interesting. I was digging into this film, and so both James Caan and Terrence Stamp are embarrassed that they were ever part of this movie. James Caan, people ask him about it, and he's like, why would you want to talk about that movie? Terrence Stamp.
What's his favorite? Brian's song?
I don't know. He's got a lot of movies. Probably one of them Godfather movies or something. Terrence Stamp, actually, there's a moment in the middle of the movie where Harcourt transforms into a real big bad guy. Terrence Stamp refused to play that. He's like, nope, you can put somebody else in that makeup, not me. I'll give you some ADR voice work, but I am not going to be that guy. So he kind of checked out. Mandy Patinkin seemed to be the only one that hung around for it. I was surprised, though. We talked about this before the show. I was surprised, it looked good. The makeup, for the most part, looks good. The film, it looks like 1988, but so does Die Hard. Yeah. And it works for me.
It's still enjoyable. And I was more surprised about that. I was expecting to pop it open and
cringe.
Just see like the beginnings of Young Guns like we talked about last week, and I was expecting to have that feeling again. I didn't. It was weird.
And this is also a story that, Bright, Will Smith's Netflix movie that came out last year, 2 years ago, and is spawning another one. They borrowed heavily from this as well, of the cop partner, the buddy cop duo, that one of them's an alien, one of them's a human. Can we work together? I don't remember that happening before this. I don't remember the alien-human team before Alien Nation.
Well, we had Enemy Mine. Was that before or after?
That was right around then. I don't know.
Yeah, it was. It was kind of popular theme during that time.
Cool theme to have.
Aliens, and you had E.T. and all these great things.
Nobody saw E.T.
And the director was Graham Baker, which I think is a great name.
Yeah,
I am very fan of the Graham Cracker.
Very
so
good. I am as well. Let's take a quick look ahead, sir. What is going to be coming out the weekend of March 29th? We have 3 movies that weekend. The first one, movie that you are highly anticipating, Dumbo, is coming to screens. Can an elephant fly? You'll believe one can. We also have Unplanned. This is a movie about a Planned Parenthood spokesperson who made an about face. This is the first film from the Pure Flix film production company to get an R rating.
It's Pure Flix.
This is the faith-based filmmakers.
Oh,
they got an R rating for the first time for this movie.
Wow. I bet I know why.
We'll see. And the last one is The Beach Bum. It is about a rebellious stoner who lives life his own way, starring, as it only can, Matthew McConaughey as a rebellious stoner living on a beach.
I believe it.
Feels like they just followed him around with a camera. He didn't know he was in a movie. But those are all the films that will be coming out March 29th. Before we leave you, we have to thank our sponsor. We've talked about it, the Palace here in Sun Prairie. Thank you for sponsoring our program. Katrina, thank you for giving us our tickets. She's my favorite. I don't care.
No,
if you are going to see a movie, as we are, you should go to Marcus Theaters Palace and sit in a Dream Lounger. It is only the best. And we are going to be going there this weekend to see a few films. The first ones we're going to be talking about next week is Jordan Peele's Us.
Been looking for that. That's on my top 10 list.
Yes, both of ours.
Yeah.
Can't wait. We also are going to get a little sneak peek of Shazam. Yeah, I'm excited for that. And we also have the A24 film Gloria Bell, which will be finally in theaters this weekend. So those are films.
We're being treated really well, aren't we?
We're doing okay.
This is awesome.
So those are the films that we'll be talking about next week. But until we meet again, I'm Jamison.
I'm Mike Roth.
Have a good one.